All right, so let me come back to the studio. You were talking about the 27 lawmakers. One of the things that the governor said yesterday through his commissioner for information is that there is still a case in the High Court in Rivers State concerning the defection of these lawmakers. And so this doesn't legitimize, that this particular Supreme Court judgment doesn't legitimize the lawmakers pending when that suit is heard at the High Court. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
No, that can be. The Supreme Court is the appeals court, and the Supreme Court has pronounced that the Rivers State Assembly is composed of everybody, 31 members, including the Martins Amawule's faction. So if there's a pending matter in the High Court, it cannot even be used to stay the execution of judgment of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has pronounced on that point. And nobody can argue that. If the High Court has a case before it, let the High Court continue, and if it succeeds, then it takes its course. But until that time, no, the judgment of the Supreme Court is supreme and must be enforced in Rivers State.
But is it right to say that it is not Uhuru yet? Because again, lawyers have said that the Supreme Court did not address the defection of the lawmakers. So whilst it has said, well, this is a constitutionally, or this is a constituted, legally constituted House of Assembly, but it has not addressed that defection, and so perhaps their legitimacy is still hanging in the balance. Oh,
well, until that is determined, because you need evidence to show that they have lost their seats. Of course, one of the ways of losing your seat is to voluntarily do so, or to defect to another political party where there's no faction, or where you're not expelled, or where there's no division in the party. So if they go back to court and they can prove that the condition under 169 applies, then the court will declare their seats vacant. But until then, they still hold their seat. So we cannot be presumptive, or to say, let's presume what the High Court will say. If actually there is another matter in the High Court about their seats, that issue of defection was not before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court cannot pronounce on a matter that is not before it. And remember that during the time this matter was at the Federal High Court, Governor Fubara's lawyers withdrew all his papers. They withdrew his counter affidavit, which could have put the facts before the court. And when that is done, the court will only rely on papers before him. And that is what happened in this case. And the Supreme Court referred to that point, that having withdrawn their counter affidavit, there is no basis for them to bring in facts about defection. So that is very clear, and the Supreme Court judgment should be enforced.
All right, so I want to get to Obiagwu in a moment, but I want to stay with you because there is a part of that judgment that says represent the 2024 budget to the House, and until that is done, the allocation will be withdrawn or withheld. If the governor refuses at this point to, represent the budget and count on the fact that, look, this case is still in the Federal High Court, would that be a legal thing to do? Can he hang on the fact that, I have a case on the defection of the 27 lawmakers not to represent the budget?
No, that would be very unlawful, and it will consider an impeachable offense, because you cannot spend money from state appropriation, from the state funds, without an appropriation law. And the appropriation law must be properly passed. And that's why the court said earlier on, as far back as December, go back and present your budget, the appropriation bill, before the proper House of Assembly, and it will be adopted. So any money that is spent by the executive, or even by the judiciary, that is not appropriated by the legislature, is unlawful, is subject to be refunded. Even all the allocations and contracts and so on that were paid without the framework for appropriation law, because that's what the law says. And for an appropriation bill to be passed, the House of Assembly had to pass it before you can start spending. Even when there is a need for alteration of the appropriation law, you have to go back to the House of Assembly to do those amendments. So there's no basis to say, because you filed a case at the Federal High Court or whatever, you can now begin to spend money without appropriation law. That is completely unlawful.
Let me get to Obiagwu. What's your interpretation of Governor Siminalayi Fubara's statement yesterday, saying that, look, this case is still, in terms of the one that has to do with the defection of the lawmakers, is still at the state high court, this high court, federal high court rather, in Rivers. Obiagwu, can you hear me? So Obiagwu, I was asking you what you make, or what's your interpretation of the comment made by the governor referring to the case at the Federal High Court in Rivers State concerning the defection of the 27 lawmakers. All right, so it looks like we have a connection challenge with Obiagwu. When we are able to reconnect, we will bring her on just to get the feel on the ground there in Rivers State. But back to you, it's when you, again, to the 27 lawmakers, there are three. So now what do you expect to happen? Because you have on one hand 4 lawmakers, on the other hand, one is a speaker here, and the other for over 4 lawmakers, and that one is a majority leader, however they have constituted themselves. And then you have 27 lawmakers. Is it a measure? Is it that this is a house that is recognized and this one ceases to be recognized? What happens in this situation?
No, there is only one House of Assembly in Rivers State, and that's one comprised of 31 members. If they have internal wranglings and 4, put themselves aside, and there's 27, it is for them to have internal arrangement. There's always an internal mechanism within the legislature of the state how to reconcile that. But the truth is that there's only one House of Assembly, and the Supreme Court has said that that House of Assembly is the one comprised of the 27 members led by Martin Nwawulu. And that is the position. Now, if the 4 members of House of Assembly, of course, 27 against 4, you can see the mathematics. If the 4 members want to come back to sit, nobody can stop them from sitting, except if the proper procedure is taken to have them suspended. I mean, this is not the first time this drama is playing out. In many other states, from Anambra to Bayelsa to Ekiti to Edo, we've seen this. And politicians have refused to learn the lessons that you cannot just take laws into your hands. There are rules, even within the House, for suspending members of the House of Assembly. So you must follow those rules. And if you don't follow those rules, set a precedent, not just for Rivers State, but for other states to know that, look, you cannot decide how many members you want to have in your state to work with in your state House of Assembly. Of course, because the mandate of the legislators are from the people. The governor or the executive or the president or whoever who is in charge of the executive has no prerogative to decide which member to work with and which not to work with, which members of political parties to work with and which not to work with. That is completely illegal because the mandate is from the people. And once you sideline a member of the House of Assembly or a member of any legislator, you're actually depriving the constituency where it comes from their proper representation. And that is very unlawful. That's constitutional democracy, that all the people have to be represented. If the person is not representing them well, the people will recall him or her. But you cannot sideline the person. And that's what the Supreme Court has re-emphasized in Rivers State, that selecting 4 members and going to sit with them in hotel rooms or wherever is completely illegal. It is completely unthought of. And we are ready. I think the Supreme Court was very correct in doing that, saying that. So for those who do not, because for people who are in their mind, they say, but they defected. If they defected, or allegedly defected, because they have said that even the APC has come out to say they don't have them in their register until that is proven by the case in the case at the Rivers State House of Assembly, but Rivers State Federal High Court. But I wanted to ask you, for those who are wondering, I mean, if they defected, shouldn't they just lose their seat? What is the procedure? For if somebody says, oh look, I'm moving from this party to this party, what is the procedure to declare that seat vacant? Well, it's the presiding officer that has the primary responsibility to do so. So if the person announces, because normally if you defect, for you to defect effectively in the floor of the House, you have to announce, you have to submit your papers of your defection, a new party, to the leadership, that is the Speaker or the President of the Senate, as the case may be. So it is for that presiding officer to decide to ask questions. Okay, did you comply with the provisions of the Constitution, which I said is, first of all, you must show that there is a division in the party and that there's a faction, and or that you are expelled from the party on which platform you are elected into seats. Now, if you are not able to show that in your submission, the presiding officer has a mandate to declare your seat vacant because you have not complied, because you have cross-carpeted. Now, if the presiding officer does not do so, then anybody can go to court. Anybody from the constituency of the person being represented can go to court for court to make such declaration. And once that declaration is made, the person loses his seat and the court will order INEC to conduct a by-election. But until that is done, the person is still occupying his seat until there's such an order from the presiding officer or from the court. So that is a procedure.